You assume suffering contradicts mercy. You take pain as evidence of distance. You ask how a benevolent order could allow what breaks your certainty. The mind demands fairness. Experience does not obey. Abdul Al Qadar al-Jilani turned this logic. He taught that suffering does not conceal God. It exposes where you cling to what is not God. Ease makes attachment comfortable. Hardship makes attachment visible. You think relief proves favor and difficulty proves rejection. He asked a simpler question. What remains when your explanations fail? If awareness outlives every condition, perhaps suffering is not the end of meaning, but the start of seeing. You are asked to test this directly. If pain removes what is false, why assume it removes the real? You review your pattern. When discomfort appears, you negotiate with it. You reason, you plan, you delay. The result is repetition, not resolution. You call it resilience. It feels like avoidance. You measure progress by relief, not by understanding. Abdul Al Qadar would call this the first trap. Resistance projects a second world beside the real one, a private order where events must obey your plan. The more you protect it, the more fragile you become. Doubt grows. What if your energy does not heal the wound but shelters the view that produced it? If you stopped managing the feeling and examined the claim beneath it, would the pain change character? If meaning is misread, can relief ever be stable? Abdul Al Qadar lived in 12th century Baghdad, where law, theology, and spiritual training converged. He studied jurisprudence with rigor and then pressed beyond form into direct recognition. His gatherings did not promise comfort. They demanded honesty. He taught discipline, poverty of claim, and endurance without complaint. Students came for answers and left with practice. He reframed hardship as instruction rather than punishment. The goal was not sensation but certainty, knowledge that abides through change. In that school, suffering marked the point where illusion loosens. If a teacher trains you to meet reality rather than negotiate it, is pain an enemy or a guide? His core argument is spare. Reality is one. The will that governs is one. What you call my will against events is an interpretation, not a second power. Suffering appears where the self insists on being the center. When the claim weakens, perception clears. Endurance, sabr, is not passivity. It is accurate seeing without protest. Gratitude, shukr, is not courtesy. It is agreement with what is. Contentment, rida, is not resignation. It is trust in order without precondition. None of these deny action. They deny ownership of outcomes. You are asked to act, then release the claim that action must guarantee your preferred state. If understanding depends on the collapse of false authorship, can hardship be the instrument of that collapse? You fear that acceptance means losing agency. You worry that if you stop arguing with events, you will surrender responsibility. Abdul Al Qadar separated responsibility from control. Responsibility is alignment with what is true. Control is the demand that truth obey you. In control mode, every outcome is a verdict on identity. In alignment, outcomes are information that refine intention. The conflict is not between you and fate. It is between your self-image and reality. Pain challenges the image. The image fights back. Exhaustion follows. You stand at a fork. Preserve the image or investigate it. If the self you defend is a shifting construct, why anchor worth to its victories? If worth does not rise or fall with result, what changes in how you meet loss? A small change occurs. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What claim in me is being exposed?" The question moves from narrative to knowledge. You notice that the sharp edge of suffering is not the event but the belief attached to it. The belief says, "I must have this," or "I must not face that." Abdul Al Qadar called this attachment the veil. When the veil tears, awareness is not diminished. It is clarified. The same difficulty now functions differently. It becomes a teacher, not an opponent. If the point of pain is to reveal attachment, is its work complete when attachment is seen? If seen, must it still wound in the same way? Clarity deepens. You see that relief without insight only resets the cycle. Insight without surrender stalls at analysis. The two must meet. Surrender is not collapse. It is consent to truth already present. With consent, meanings reorganize. The event is still the event. The story loses its authority. Abdul Al Qadar taught that when God draws a servant near, he removes what blocks recognition. Sometimes the obstruction is comfort. Sometimes it is success. Sometimes it is certainty about who you think you are. The removal feels like suffering from the viewpoint of attachment. From the viewpoint of truth, it is purification. If the same act both wounds and heals, depending on where you stand, which vantage should guide your reading? A quieter intelligence appears. Thought slows not by force, but by lack of argument. You no longer ask reality to negotiate. You meet it and act within it. You correct what you can. You release what exceeds you. The heart is not numb. It is lucid. Abdul Al Qadar described this as the disappearance of complaints. Complaint is the echo of a private world. When that echo fades, understanding holds. Suffering may still arise, but it no longer defines the horizon. It becomes a passage rather than an identity. If identity is not built from weather, what remains constant through every weather? If constancy is recognized, what authority does pain retain over meaning? You ask how to live this, not just think it. The practice is simple and exact. First, witness the reflex to escape. Name the belief that gives it energy. Second, return to responsibility. Act where action is yours. Refuse the theater of control. Third, hold endurance without drama. Endurance is attention that does not bargain. Fourth, translate insight into gratitude. Thankfulness is recognition that instruction reached you. Abdul Al Qadar trained students to repeat this cycle until it became natural. Over time, fear of pain weakens because its message is understood. You cease to mortgage your peace to outcomes. Decisions simplify. Relationships clear. Work becomes service, not self-proof. If meaning stabilizes inside this alignment, what could success add to it, and what could failure subtract? Return to the first doubt. Does suffering hide God or reveal Him? The journey revises the answer. Suffering hides God when you protect the image that pain threatens. It reveals God when you let the image fall. Abdul Al Qadar's hidden practice was not admiration of hardship, but recognition through it. The aim is not to prefer difficulty. The aim is to learn so well that difficulty loses its power to confuse. Then, ease and trial instruct equally. You do not chase one or flee the other. You meet both with the same clarity. What began as a protest ends as comprehension. What remains is a steady fact. The real is constant. The forms that teach it change. If the constant is seen, what is left to oppose? The script begins by questioning the common equation of suffering with absence. Abdul Al Qadar reframes pain as disclosure. You examine the reflex to resist, see its cost, and meet the historical discipline that trains another response. Core teaching separates responsibility from control and attachment from truth. Psychological conflict exposes the self-image as the actual source of torment. The shift asks for investigation rather than escape. Realization follows. The same event can bind or free depending on interpretation. Stillness arises as complaint fades. Integration converts insight into method. The closing insight confirms a stable recognition. Pain neither proves distance nor guarantees depth. It simply reveals your position. Recognition, not relief, is the measure.